My name is Emerson Vale. I'm 34, the forgotten middle child of a legacy-obsessed East Coast family that measures worth in last names, net worths, and who you're married to. While my siblings collected Ivy League diplomas and carefully arranged lives, I built something entirely different, something they never saw coming. I didn't rebel, I just disappeared from their narrative. They called me odd, said I was wasting my potential. My mother once told her bridge club I was dabbling in digital health, like it was pottery. My father used to pat my shoulder and say, "Some kids bloom later," like I was an embarrassment he had to water in private. I used to show up at family dinners, hoping they'd ask what I'd been working on. They never did, and eventually I stopped offering. I let them believe I was stuck at some small startup, still chasing pipe dreams in a shared office and a hoodie. I didn't correct them. I didn't need to. Because I was building something, quietly, methodically, and without their money or approval. The night of the family meeting, I showed up in a plain black dress and parked my 10-year-old Volvo behind my brother's Tesla. They were already halfway through champagne when I walked in. My mother air-kissed me like she was allergic to my cheek. My father called me kiddo, and my sister made a comment about my shoes. And then, right after they announced they were cutting me off financially, publicly, over dessert, my phone rang. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But I answered. And Danica, my assistant, said the words that changed everything. Emerson, Arceus Capital, confirmed the $40 million deal. VitalSpan is now valued at $100 million. Goldman just popped champagne. The fork fell from my mother's hand. My father blinked. My sister stopped mid-smirk. And I just smiled, because that was the moment they realized. They hadn't disowned the failure of the family. They'd just disowned their most successful member. I grew up in Marblehead, Massachusetts, a town where people don't ask what you do. They ask who your grandfather golfed with. Our house sat on a bluff overlooking the Atlantic, all white columns and manicured hedges, the kind of place featured in lifestyle magazines during the holidays. And inside that house was a family that saw life as a resume, not a story. My father, Bradford Vale, ran a private equity firm that specialized in legacy preservation. His real specialty was control. He treated people the way he treated his investments, coldly, strategically, and only if the numbers made sense. My mother, Veronica, was a third-generation debutante turned social architect. Her currency was influence. Her obsession was appearance. They had a plan for each of us. My older brother Grayson followed it to the letter. Harvard undergrad, Wharton MBA, engagement to the daughter of a senator. My younger sister Blythe played her role too. Yale Law, fashionably progressive, and always camera-ready. She'd mastered the art of appearing humble while being praised. My mother described her as impressively polished. Me? I was offbeat. From an early age, I didn't fit. While Blythe played piano in recital halls, and Grayson debated foreign policy over mocktails, I was dismantling old radios and teaching myself Python. My room smelled like soldering iron and ambition. I didn't want to be a ballerina or a bride. I wanted to build systems. My parents didn't know what to do with that. When I got into Johns Hopkins on a partial scholarship to study biomedical engineering, my father asked, "What about finance?" My mother said, "Don't you think that's a bit narrow?" When I graduated top of my class, no one came to the ceremony. They were in Nantucket for Blythe's charity gala. I learned early that success in my family wasn't about impact. It was about optics. I didn't dress the part. I didn't network at the right clubs. I didn't present my life in a glossy package. And so, I became their tolerated anomaly. The family dinners never changed. Grayson would update everyone on fund performance. Blythe would detail her fiancé's political connections. Then someone would ask, "And how's your tech thing, Emerson?" As if I were still trying to sell essential oils from my apartment. So I stopped explaining. I let them think I was lost. I didn't need their applause. I needed space. Because behind the silence, I was watching. Watching patients fall through cracks in the system. Watching specialists overbooked in one city while patients in another waited 6 months to be seen. Watching inefficiencies that no one in the healthcare machine had the incentive to fix. That's when I started building VitalSpan, a platform that didn't care what your last name was, just whether you needed help. I spent 3 years coding, researching, pitching. Most days I wore the same 2 hoodies and worked out of coffee shops. I got rejected more times than I can count, but I never stopped, because I saw what it could become. And one day, it did. But I didn't tell them. When Grayson bragged about his second home in Aspen, I just nodded. When Blythe talked about the governor attending her wedding, I smiled politely. Let them think I was nothing. Let them stay smug. Because I wasn't building for their approval. I was building for something far greater. I didn't plan to build a company. I just saw a problem no one else was fixing and couldn't look away. At the time, I was working at a mid-sized health tech firm in Cambridge. My job was back-end infrastructure, nothing glamorous. But from where I sat, I could see all the cracks in the system. Patients with chronic illnesses waiting months for specialists. Appointment slots going unused because of bad scheduling systems. People falling through administrative black holes. One night, around 2 a.m., I was staring at a referral data spreadsheet. I started sketching an idea, an AI-based platform to match patients with specialists, prioritizing urgency and availability. No middlemen, no red tape, just logic and care. That's how VitalSpan was born, in the margins of my life. I worked on it at night, on weekends, in a hoodie with cold coffee and noise-canceling headphones. I didn't have investors. I had stubbornness. I didn't tell my family. I didn't need their opinions muddying my conviction. I pitched my prototype to 30 investors. 29 said no. Most didn't even listen past the first minute. One asked if I had a male CTO. Another suggested I take a COO role and let someone more credible lead. Then came Cynthia Ewan, a former trauma unit director turned angel investor. She watched my demo, asked 3 technical questions, then wrote a check for $150,000. She didn't flinch. I've lived that scheduling chaos, she said. You're solving it. That seed check gave me 6 months of runway. I quit my job, hired 2 contractors willing to work for equity, and moved into a tiny office above a dry cleaner. The air conditioning broke every 3rd week. We coded through July in tank tops and sweat, surviving on bagels and caffeine. When we got our first pilot site, an overworked clinic outside Providence, I built the integration myself. After 3 months, their patient wait times dropped by 38%. Referrals were up. Staff satisfaction improved. That result got us 3 more clinics, then 10. We weren't growing fast. We were growing right. The second round of funding brought in enough capital for me to hire a proper team. Developers, data engineers. A soft-spoken designer named Jacob, who could build clean UX with one hand while eating a burrito with the other. And Danica. Danica applied as an executive assistant. Within 2 weeks, she was managing our vendor relationships, rewriting our onboarding process, and organizing our clinical pilot data. I moved her to operations lead, unofficially. She kept saying, I'm not qualified for this, while solving problems no one else could touch. She became my right hand, calm where I was sharp, focused when I burned out. She made it possible for me to keep building without drowning. Still, I didn't tell my family. Not when we hit 50 clinics. Not when we moved into a proper office. Not when I got interviewed by a mid-tier health tech magazine and saw my face in print for the first time. Let them think I was tinkering. Let them keep calling it her little tech job. Their ignorance was insulation. The only person who might have suspected was Aunt Liv. She once texted me a screenshot of an article about patient matching algorithms and wrote, "This sounds suspiciously like you." I didn't confirm it, but I didn't deny it either. By the time we began talking to Arceus Capital about a Series B deal, VitalSpan was running in 117 hospitals across 12 states. I was managing a team of 40, and I still showed up to family dinners in a 10-year-old Volvo. It wasn't about hiding. It was about protecting what I had built. Because I knew, if they found out too soon, they'd try to take it, shape it, claim it. And I wasn't going to let them. The invitation came, as always, through a group text from my mother's assistant. Annual Vail Family Strategy Dinner, RSVP by Friday. Formal attire, assigned seating. It wasn't a holiday. It wasn't a reunion. It was a quarterly performance review disguised as a family meal. My parents called them strategy dinners. as if our relationships were just another line item in their estate plan. I almost didn't go. I could have claimed a conflict, and no one would have questioned it. But some part of me, some stubborn, unhealed part, still wanted to show up, still wanted to be seen, even if it ended the way it always did, so I went. I wore a black dress that looked like Banana Republic, but wasn't. Parked my decade-old Volvo behind Grayson's leased Aston Martin, took a breath and rang the doorbell, like a guest in the house I once called home. Grayson opened the door, already holding a glass of scotch. "Still driving the same tank?" he asked, not unkindly, just predictably. "Still wearing the same haircut from prep school?" I replied, stepping inside. The house smelled like bergamot and judgment. My mother swept in with an air kiss and an arched brow. "You look efficient," she said, scanning me like an asset about to be liquidated. "Thanks," I replied. "You look consistent." We exchanged tight smiles. Dinner started with champagne and curated updates. Grayson announced his firm's new real estate fund and upcoming Aspen retreat for select partners. Blythe followed with glowing commentary on her fiancé's political launch and her newly published article in the Atlantic Monthly. Ghostwritten, of course. The applause around the table was polite and performative. Everyone knew their role. Then my father cleared his throat. A signal. The show was about to pivot. "As part of our ongoing family estate planning," he began, "we've decided to make some strategic reallocations." He looked at Grayson. "Your brother will assume control of the Vale Family Trust next quarter." Grayson gave a rehearsed nod, happy to ensure continuity. "Blythe," my mother interjected, beaming, "will be gifted the Nantucket property as a wedding present. It's time that house served a greater purpose." Blythe smiled like someone accepting an award. "Brian and I are grateful. He's already drafting plans to host his first campaign retreat there." Then the pause, the shift, the silence before the blow. "And you, Emerson," my father said, folding his hands like a hedge fund manager preparing to divest. "We've come to a difficult but necessary decision." My stomach turned, but my face stayed still. "We're ceasing all financial support. Effective immediately," he said, with the precision of a man who'd practiced the line in a boardroom mirror. "No more annual stipend, no access to family properties, and you'll be removed from future inheritance designations, pending a reassessment at some future point." I blinked. "You're cutting me off." "It's not punishment," my mother said quickly. "It's encouragement." Grayson shrugged. "You've always marched to your own drum, Em. We just think it's time you calibrated a bit." Blythe nodded sympathetically. "You're not getting younger. Stability matters." "Stability," I repeated. "According to whom?" My father's voice hardened. "According to metrics. You've resisted every attempt to align with the family's vision. We've been patient." "No," I said quietly. "You've been dismissive." My mother sighed. "You're creative, dear, but creativity doesn't pay the bills." I laughed once, short and sharp. "That's rich coming from people who've never paid their own." My father leaned forward. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Hostility, emotional volatility. You've chosen an unstable path. You've never asked what that path is." "We assumed you'd tell us if it mattered," Grayson said. "And I assumed you'd care without needing a headline." My phone buzzed in my purse. Once, twice. Then again, a burst of 3 vibrations. Danica's emergency signal. "Excuse me," I said, standing. "That might be work." My father huffed. "Of course! That little project can't wait." I stepped away, answering quietly. "Danica?" Her voice was electric. "Emerson. Arceus just confirmed. 40 million secured. Valuations locked at 100 million. Goldman's drafting the official release. Forbes is requesting a photo shoot for Monday." For a second, I just stood there, eyes closed, absorbing the words like sunlight. Then I turned around. Back at the table, my family had returned to their wine and self-congratulation. They didn't even notice I'd left, until I spoke. "That call," I said calmly, "was from my assistant. My company, VitalSpan, just secured a $40 million investment from Arceus Capital." 4 sets of eyes locked on me. We're being valued at $100 million pre-IPO, I continued, and Goldman Sachs will lead the offering. My mother's wine glass clinked against her plate. Blythe's smile cracked. Grayson looked up like someone hearing a foreign language. My father froze. "You're serious?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I've been serious the whole time. You just weren't paying attention." The room didn't just fall silent, it shifted. Their eyes, once glazed with polite disinterest, snapped into focus like a camera lens clicking into clarity. My father cleared his throat. "You said Goldman is leading the IPO?" "That's right." "And the partner?" he asked, voice tight. "Elliot Brackner," I replied. "He's been mentoring me through the process. Very supportive." His mouth twitched. Elliot was someone my father had tried, unsuccessfully, to recruit 20 years ago. It probably stung to hear I had his direct line. "Darling," my mother said, recovering first, "this is wonderful news. Why didn't you ever tell us?" I took a sip of wine. "Would it have changed anything?" "Of course," she said too quickly. "We would have celebrated." I raised an eyebrow. "Before or after cutting me off?" Grayson jumped in. "Look, clearly this was a misunderstanding. We just didn't realize how serious your work was." "You didn't ask." "Well, now we know," Blythe said, her voice upbeat and artificial. "And I think it's amazing. Brian's campaign could really use a platform like yours to promote healthcare innovation. We should talk." "Pass," I said flatly. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'm not interested in political partnerships built on sudden family pride, especially from people who couldn't remember what I majored in." My father leaned forward. "Let's be practical. The family fund could invest. We can get you in front of the right networks." "You're too late," I cut in. "VitalSpan has all the funding it needs, from people who believed before the headlines." His voice dropped. "This is bigger than you, Emerson. You owe it to the family." I stood. "No, I owe me." My mother reached for my arm. "Let's not be emotional." "I'm not. I'm focused. The same way you were when you disinvited me from the inheritance table." Grayson gave a weak laugh. "You're really going to hold a grudge over that?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm going to hold a boundary." Danica texted again. Wall Street Journal confirmed. "They're sending a photographer Tuesday." I slipped my phone away. This was lovely. But I have a company to run, and a life that doesn't revolve around proving anything to this table. Blythe called after me. "You'll be at the campaign dinner next week, right?" I didn't turn around. "My speaking fee starts at $50,000. And then I walked out, leaving behind their legacy and stepping fully into mine. The night after the dinner, I stood barefoot on the balcony of my apartment, watching the Boston skyline glow under a velvet sky. The air was still. My phone was buzzing somewhere inside, but I let it ring. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was just done chasing what never existed. They had finally seen me, but not because they'd asked, listened, or cared. They saw me because I became impossible to ignore. And that's not love. That's convenience. In the days that followed, everything moved faster. Goldman finalized the IPO calendar. Arceus released a joint statement. VitalSpan's inbox flooded with inquiries from major systems across the country. Danica and I worked 18-hour days, and I loved every second of it. Meanwhile, my family resurfaced. A voicemail from my father. "Let's reset. Schedule something this week." A LinkedIn message from Grayson. "Would love to discuss crossover opportunities." A handwritten card from my mother. "We're so proud. We always believed in you, darling." Even Blythe, ever strategic, sent me a speaking invitation for her fiancé's campaign fundraiser, attached to a draft speech she'd written herself. But I didn't reply, because belief that only arrives after validation isn't belief, it's opportunism. Instead, I poured my focus into the people who'd stood beside me before any valuation was announced. I launched the Veil Initiative, a $10 million fund for first-generation women in health tech. The name? Mine. Not theirs, just mine. And when the time came to celebrate our first major international hospital partnership, I didn't plan a press event. I hosted a quiet rooftop dinner, no photographers, no speeches, just my team, my mentors, and Aunt Liv, who never asked me to be smaller. She hugged me as the sun set and whispered, "You've done more than they will ever understand, and maybe that's the gift." Later, Danica raised her glass. To Emerson, who didn't wait to be chosen. She chose herself. She built something with no permission, no shortcuts, and no apology. And in doing that, she made room for the rest of us. There were no cameras to catch that moment, no press release drafted. And yet, that quiet toast meant more than any headline ever could. I didn't need to respond. I just lifted my glass. Because for the first time, I wasn't chasing approval or fighting for acknowledgement. I wasn't trying to earn my place. I was already standing in it. And that, finally, was enough.